Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is DH Thorne here, and I wanted to do another video in my Demon in Review series. This one's going to be about Baal. Now, Baal, Baal, Beelzebub, there's all different names that have been associated with this entity throughout the history of using them in the occult. And I kind of made a mistake dealing with Baal, and I'm going to admit that now. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, I didn't do something wrong that pissed him off per se, although maybe a little bit. I made the mistake of, like, instead of just wanting to get to know him a little bit, I really asked him for gnosis about him. And I say that's a mistake because the rabbit hole that he's led me down is kind of intense. It wasn't quite what I was ready for, especially with my work season coming up. I don't have time to devote to this. But when I channeled him, when I evoked him, he came through very faintly. I think it's partially because of my work. Going into this time of year, I'm going to be working a lot of hours, and a lot of my attention and focus is on my own suffering right now, on what I'm going to have to do in the next month. So evoking him, I couldn't put 110% like I like to do, and it wasn't like I was going through the motions, but it was kind of like the signal was weak, and so I evoked him, and the manifestations that I got were very subtle, very basic. It was almost for a minute like I didn't get anything. I had gotten a strong chill down my spine, which is one of my signs that I'm being contacted. Um, which, I don't usually get chills about anything. So if I'm evoking an entity and I go, "Are you here?" and it goes, and I feel the cold fingers going down my spine, it's a pretty good sign. So I rely on that a lot, especially if I'm not getting a strong sign. And so I'm like, all right, something's here, let's talk to it. And I started asking it questions, telling it what I wanted it to do for me. And one of the things I specified was I wanted Gnosis. I wanted to add him to my grimoire. He's a major entity, he's a major king, he's a major player, and his history is well known in many cultures. He's like a Lucifer. In fact, he's often been described as the devil. So there's reasons for that in history. But so I went through this, and I'm scribbling out on my paper, and I make a blog post about the gnosis that I channeled, so I'm not going to go too into that, except to say that I kept getting hung up on certain problems. One of them was the Goetic Baal is Baal, B-A-E-L, okay? And he comes in the Goetia as a human head, a human torso with a frog, like a toad, and a cat. Three heads, one is a frog and one's a cat. And the body is his normal torso of a human, but then a spider's legs and I guess lower body, almost like I don't know, like something from Dungeons and Dragons or something, like a very weird entity. And that imagery doesn't sit well with me because just the way my mind works, I like maybe a little bit more, we'll say, modern or whatever, imagery of demons where they're a personification of something. I like that better. It just sits with me better. I can deal with it better. I don't like weird abstract, like it's a wheel with a head on it. I don't like that. So, and I don't believe these entities have these bodies anyway. I think this is just how the original people who interacted with them saw them. So I was kind of keying in on the more traditional vision of what I thought of as Baal, which is like a minotaur type of entity with like a bull's head and a big masculine strong body. There's actually a really cool picture that I was using, which is it's like a bull skull with eyes and stuff. This is really cool. So I was kind of using that, and I ended up feeling like I connected way more to the traditional Phoenician Canaanite version of Baal than anything else. And I started, as I'm doing this, I'm writing down these things, and I'm getting fertility, and I'm getting all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like anything in the Goetia, because the Goetia is like makes you invisible, and frogs and stuff like this. It's just like, what were they on when were they on acid or something? I don't know. Is this just an aspect of Baal, or what is this? And I guess they'd say it Baal, but it didn't sit right with me. And but this other one did. This bull version did. This fertility god, and I felt more. I know that in the Goetia and other sources he's listed as a fire entity, which I see because you pass your children through the fire is how the history goes. It's that's the child sacrifice stuff. But I also felt a very strong earth, and I wrote that in my thing. A very strong earth vibe coming off of this. The word earth and dairy and all this kind of stuff, animal husbandry and planting, and so I'm getting this. He's more of a pastoral demon, I guess you could say, and as I'm writing all this, like I'm going like, there's something missing here. There's something wrong. I'm getting conflicting signals, and I'm feeling like this entity that I'm getting. Maybe it's my own knowledge of this entity from being a former Christian, believing this is like an evil child sacrifice demon. And it all just kind of, like, I started asking about child sacrifice. It was one of the first things I got into because it just popped into my head. Ask him about this. And I think it kind of bothered him because, probably because that's a weapon that was used against this demon in particular in history. But I kept getting, like, like, do you like child sacrifice? Because demons don't usually ask for this. They don't want this when I've dealt with them. They never even come up. In fact, if I say, do you want me to sacrifice something to you, they usually like random things that anybody would like, soda, food, or they want you to do something for them. They want you to go, I often put it like this, they might tell you to go put a rock on a fence post in the middle of nowhere, that they specify. And why, it doesn't matter, just do it. That's what they want. There's a reason for it. Maybe it's like chaos theory. Maybe by doing that, you're going to influence somebody else. I don't know. But the point is that they don't ask for, like, child sacrifice, human sacrifice. They like blood as an offering because they can connect to you through it, I think. But I don't think that they like. Currently, they don't ask for these things. Maybe it's just because of our culture. Maybe they know that that's offensive to us and they don't want to offend us. But back in the day, this was done. This was a big deal. And I had always, coming from a Christian background, I didn't have any idea about anything other than the Christian view of this, which is Baal is this evil demon that likes to eat children in fire, And so I think I kind of, I don't think I offended it, but I think I had pushed a little too hard in this direction. He sent me a vision of Beastmaster. And there's a scene in Beastmaster, like the whole movie is dedicated to this this evil sorcerer Maax, which is sacrificing children to the god Ar. And he sent me like that image, and he sent me specifically the one where Beastmaster had just saved the child using the eagle, and the eagle flies away with the baby, and the evil sorcerer guy uses an opportunity to lie and say, see, Ar wants your children. And that scene just like, wham, like I said, I don't see visions very often, but this popped into my head very strong. Which led me to believe that Baal was trying to tell me that the people of the past were using demons as an excuse, these entities which weren't demons to them, they were gods as an excuse to consolidate power through manipulation of the public, through child sacrifice and all this other stuff. That's kind of the message I was getting, which sounds legitimate to me. That sounds like something people would do. But at the same time, after I finished all this, before I get into that, and then I kept pressing. I kept saying, yeah, but did you ask them for this? Was this what you wanted initially? And why didn't you stop them is kind of what I was getting at. Why, if you didn't want this, why didn't you stop them? And I realized, like, oops, I think I just stepped in some poop. You're not really supposed to be adversarial to these beings, really. And I think I was kind of, without meaning to, I was leaning in that direction too strong. And I got one more strong sentence, which was, some things are not to be known. Specifically, that was the sentence, and I wrote it down. Some things are not to be known. And I don't think I pissed him off. Like, he didn't, like, act angry towards me, but I think it was kind of like, if you don't stop asking about this, we're not going to talk anymore. And this was wrong of me, and this is something you have to understand. I'm willing to tell you this because you need to, when you're doing your own work with these entities, you need to figure out where your position is. You have to be careful. I don't think he's closed off to me at all. I still feel like he wants me to research him because he's been pointing me towards other things now ever since, very strongly. But it was definitely abrupt, and at that point, I still kept getting gnosis from him, but it was more subtle, more like a trickle of words and thoughts and things. It wasn't as strong. And so I finished the conjuration, and I blessed him. I gave him an offering, and I closed it out, and I let the candles burn, and I let the incense burn down. I gave him the blood on the sigil and everything. He seemed pleased with that. And I had asked him, as I said, for gnosis about him and demons in general, and entities in general. And afterwards, I just had this urge, like you have to follow up on your requests by taking action of your own. You can't just ask and hope things come to you. So I just started Googling Baal, because I hadn't done that yet. Like I said, go into these things with only a modicum of information, just enough to lock into them. Don't research them and then do it. Just do a little research. Find out how you can contact them and do it, and then research, because this will help you validate your experience. Did you contact the demon or something else? And so I started researching, and I went into this rabbit hole of conspiracy theory. And it's not really conspiracy theory, but it's like that because there's a lot of information that was suppressed by Abrahamic religions over the centuries, um, and things that I had no idea. Because as much as I'm into anthropology, I kind of steer clear of that region because I'm just not into it. I'm more into Asia, and this thing I was being taught was that Baal was the title of pretty much any of the Elohim that were the sons, the children of El, which was the primary deity, and that Yahweh Elohim, which Yahweh was supposedly under El, and there was, Yahweh being the Christian, or not Christian, but the Abrahamic God, and there's this whole big thing going on that kind of blew me away because I found this video by this guy, which I don't agree with much of anything else he's done, but this video series is very informative, and even if it's not all 100% true, you're getting a lot of good information in this video, and it was kind of twisting my mind. This is like a 3-hour video lecture, so I've only been through about 2/3 of it, so there's a little bit more to go. But it's really kind of unsettling because here you are communing with this entity that you think of as this specific, thing, and it turns out that everything you know is either a lie, an exaggeration, or something created by an enemy to give it like scary features, even the bowl shape and all this other stuff. Some of this is not true, and some of it is true. Some things are true in ways you don't know. Like you might not realize that the Israelites at the time, the Hebrews at the time, they were sacrificing people too. They were doing child sacrifice as well. There's even belief that Abraham really did sacrifice Isaac, and that it wasn't at least something along those lines. It's pretty trippy. So there's a lot of things because the historical records don't necessarily match what the Bible says, and the things we found after the fact are disputing things. There's even a theory that Jesus and Christianity is actually the product of Baalists. The Baal worship turned into Hellenistic stuff and Roman gods, and El became Jupiter and all this other stuff. You'd have to watch the video because I'm not going to repeat all of the knowledge because I'm probably going to get half of it wrong. But there's this whole big flow from ancient antiquity till now, which tells you that we don't know what we're dealing with sometimes, and and it kind of set me back a little bit in the sense that now I've got to reassess what am I dealing with, what are these entities again, because sometimes you get very comfortable contacting these demons and just trusting that they're what they say they are in the Goetia or in the Bible or wherever you're getting your source material from. And a lot of the times this is wrong or it's a lie. And these entities will try to tell you this, but because they're limited to telling you what you already know, it's kind of hard for them to give you new information that you don't already have somewhere in there. I'm not saying it never happens, but in my experience, when they want you to know something, they steer you in the direction of a source. They'll steer you in the direction of a teacher or a video series or something. And they usually will inspire you rather than tell you, if that makes sense. In a very real sense, when the Greeks called them daemons, and they were daemons that were inspirational entities, they're muses basically, they would inspire you to learn something. They wouldn't just give it to you. Or if they give you knowledge, it's an understanding kind of knowledge. It's not a, for example, if you say to a demon, I want to know Shakespeare, they're not going to just, poof, you've now read all of Shakespeare. You're just going to have this overwhelming urge to read all of Shakespeare. It's kind of more like that. And so I think this entity is trying to guide me towards the knowledge that I'm seeking because it can't just implant it directly necessarily. Maybe in some ways it does, but not the way I need it. It needs me to learn it through the work of learning it. And again, what's coming through very strongly is that what I'm learning even is questionable, which leads me back to that one phrase, which I'm probably going to make a motto somewhere keep it in mind. Some things are not to be known. And I took that not as a warning that I'm not supposed to know or that I can't know. In other words, it's not like no one will know this. It's that some things are hidden. It's occulted knowledge for a reason. And I think that the powers that be, the ones that run the world, the elite, whatever they are, there's information that they might have or that they have destroyed and we can't get to anymore, or that they still have and keep locked away for whatever reason, that is part of that. Some things are not to be known. Not some things can't be known. Some things are unable to be known. Some things are not to be known. They're occulted. A lot of times when people think of the occult, they think we're the occult because we're doing this, and there's truth in that. But the occult is also what they're doing to us. They occult knowledge from us as well. So the occult isn't just the witches and the warlocks and the necromancers. The occult is also whatever. I don't know if you want to call them the Illuminati or, the Freemasons or whatever group it is that you believe in. The elites that run things, they have occulted information too. You better believe that they do. In fact, a lot of times we can get big for our britches as occultists because we know so many secrets and so many weird, twisted things because of our research and our work that we can sometimes not realize that if we know this, there's people with much more resources that know a lot more than we will ever know. You know what I mean? These are people who've been in power there generationally since perhaps the time of the Bible. So keep this in mind. Don't get too big for your britches. There's probably people out there, heck, maybe some of them are watching this video right now, who, hell, I might even get contacted and say, stop it, who know things that I don't know and that I'll never know. So keep this in mind when you're doing your research. On some level, all these entities will tell you, if you ask them, they all make it clear that they work with what you understand. They're more of a broad energy field of idea that you reach into and you pull down what makes sense to you, and that becomes the entity. So if you understand Lucifer as an angel of light, you're going to pull him down as an angel of light, even though it might not be what he is, because he's not. He's a thought. He's a wave of like a nebulous cloud of possibility that is an archetype, and you might pull down the Angel of Light version, or the Venus version, or the Horus version, whichever one you want, really, if you know them all. Baal is the same way. I pulled down the horned bull god, and other people are going to pull down the three-headed goetic version, and so on. So be aware that it's not necessarily important to follow the rabbit hole all the way to where they come from, because don't be surprised if the origin of all of these entities is egregoric. Don't be surprised if somewhere in prehistory, somewhere thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years ago, some little caveman child thought up an imaginary friend that was a bull-headed entity, and that, because he had some talent without knowing it in magic or mysticism, maybe he was on shrooms at the time, I don't know, he manifested this entity in the astral realm, and it took on a personality and became a god to a culture. So that's that.